Hi, this is Melinda. I'm going to show you how I made these cute little watercolor cards. They're 4x6. My intent is to give them away, just to say thank you to nurses or to the grocery store attendant, or give them to some senior citizens that are in senior care facilities. There's so many things that you can do, or just send them to a friend, just to encourage them and give them hope in this time. So I want to show you how I made these. They're just simply made on watercolor. I used Arches watercolor paper, and I cut them myself, and I made my own envelopes. And I did several birds, and they're all hand painted and just blank on the inside for now until I know who I'm giving them to. But you can do this with any subject. You can paint flowers, something simple. You can just even do drawings on regular paper. You can do whatever you want to, just to say thank you to people. And so that's what I've done here. And I've made several. I'm going to make a lot more. And I'm going to show you how I did these. And then I'm going to show you how I made this see-through vellum envelope. Of course, these are not necessarily for sending in the mail, but just handing to people. You can also make envelopes out of just any kind of paper, really. And I'm going to show you how I did that and what products I used, and then maybe you can make some of these yourself. The first thing I did to get started was one evening just sitting watching TV. I sat and drew some birds. I did several different designs. I wanted 8 or 10 of them so that I could make plenty of cards and have a variety of them, but have just a few designs that I've pre-drawn. Now you can trace them if you want, if you don't know how to draw, or you can just skip this step altogether and draw directly onto your watercolor paper. I didn't want to do that because I didn't want a lot of pencil lines, and when I'm sketching I do some erasing, and I just didn't want to do that to the watercolor paper, so I pre-drew them. I drew these myself using a reference photo. I wanted to also practice my drawing skills, so I did several here on my sketchbook. This is my watercolor paper. Now, normally Arches is the most expensive, and you don't have to use the most expensive watercolor paper if you don't want to. However, I wanted to really show my appreciation to those who are serving us during this time, or that need a little comfort, and I wanted to use the best and make my birds look the best. So that's why I wanted to use Arches, and it's worth it. It's worth the price for me. So this is a 10 by 14 cold press, 140 pound Arches watercolor paper. I can get 2 cards out of this and have some left over to make bookmarks for later. I like to make bookmarks so when people buy my artwork, then I send them a little gift of a watercolor bookmark as well. This is my paper trimmer that I bought. I got it at an art supply store. I couldn't find it when I wanted to link it in my description box, but there's one on Amazon that looks like the exact same thing. So I'm going to put that in the description box, and you can take a look at that if you want to buy one. So I'm going to trim it. This is 10 by 14, so I'm going to trim it to size 12. And with this trimmer, there's one button here that does scoring, and the other one that does the actual trimming. And as you saw, the ruler kind of pops out, which is really nice. So I'm going to trim it to 12 inches this way. And then this way, I'm going to cut 2 pieces of 4 inches. Awesome. Now here are my two pieces. I can use them either for bookmarks, or I also use them sometimes when I'm doing a painting. I use them as a swatch tester for my colors, so I know I'm getting the right colors when I'm painting. The next thing I need to do, and I usually turn this over to the back first, is I'm going to score it at 6 inches so that it's going to fold really nicely right in half. So I'm going to use this black button here and just go over it a couple of times. It makes this score. So I'm going to fold it at the score, and then I'm going to turn it over and fold it again so that it has a really nice, even, nice looking fold to use. So here's my bone folder, and you can just use that to make it even flatter for your cards. So here's my second one. Six inches. There we go, 2 cards ready to paint. You can do them the other way as well, so that they open this way, or you can cut them to where it opens this way. But the purpose of these cards, not only are they cards, but because they're also a normal size that you can frame, I'm not going to put anything else on the front, so that the recipient can cut it here, or they can just fold it and put it in a frame, and so they have a little painting as well as a card. So the next step in making these cards is I'm going to choose one of the sketches that I've done, that I've pre-drawn, and I'm going to put that on my light box and turn it on. And I'm going to put my watercolor paper on top. And the reason that I do it, the reason I do this is so that I can do many cards and do them quicker than if I had to continually draw new birds. Now the light box works great. I mean light pad, not a light box, but this light pad works really, really great. And normally I would turn off all my lights to do this so that it showed up much better, but since I'm recording, I'm gonna just try it, just leaving the lights on. And it's a basic guide. I still have the bird pulled up on my iPad so that I can make sure I'm drawing it correctly, since I can't see it really well. But this just makes it so much easier to pre-draw than to worry about the drawing being correct and having to do it so many times over. Okay, that's all I need. That's all the information I need from my sketch. So I'm going to put that aside and put my light box aside. Now I'm going to add water to the main body of the bird, except for where I want there to be white. And I just want to wet where I'm going to add the main color, which is like a warm gray color. I just want to leave areas white in my painting. And it doesn't have to be exact. This is just a loose, fun painting that's going to be a gift, and I'm not going to stress over it because I want to make a lot of these. So I'm going to mix some Payne's Gray with a little bit of raw umber, and I'm going to make it pretty wet because this is just going to be the first layer. And I'm going to mix some Payne's Gray with a little bit of raw umber, and I'm going to make it pretty wet because this is just going to be the first layer. And I'm going to mix some Payne's Gray with a little bit of raw umber, and I'm going to make it pretty wet because this is just going to be the first layer. So everywhere that I have water on my paper is where it's going to end up going. Where I didn't add any water, it should be fine and won't continue moving to it. I'm going to touch a little bit of this brown into the color that I've already added. And then just dragging my brush just really, really lightly to look a little more fuzzy for the bird. It's white here, but I want to give it something. And I'm just blending it in right here on the edges. I don't want the edges right now to be real hard. I'm going to do the same here where it's a little lighter there. I'm just dragging it up almost to make it look like, you know, a little bit featherish. Okay, that's the first layer of the bird. I'm gonna leave that, let that dry. So now I can go down and I want to work on something that's not touching that. So I'm gonna do a little something on this branch. So I'm going to wet it first. And again, I don't have to be super careful because I want to get it done quickly. Just trying to get around those feet there. And I think I'm going to do a pretty blue color for the first layer. Really light. Awesome. And now I'm just going to touch in some, let's do some, I can never remember the names. This is how I remember the names of my colors. I did a swatch, and so I'm constantly looking at it to see what color I'm grabbing. This is undersea green. And I'm just going to touch it in towards the bottom of the limbs. I want a little bit of the blue at the top. It's gonna be where light is touching the limb. So right under the bird I can get a little bit more green in there. I want this to be a sweet, cute little bird. And then I'm gonna add just a little bit of raw umber. And I can do another layer where I make this raw umber a little darker towards the bottom of the limbs. Okay, that's what I'm going to do on the branch right now. I think I'll work on the tail while I'm waiting still for this to dry. You can use a hair dryer if you want, and a lot of cases I will do that. I'm going to get some manganese blue and I'm going to mix it with some teal, maybe some Sleeping Beauty turquoise, just a little bit. And I'm going to do a really light application first over the tail feathers. And it's basically the same color that I put on the branch. I want to cause some nice color harmony to happen there. Alright, see how quickly you can do these small birds. Now I'm going to work on the beak. The beak is just as important as the eye to get a bird to look like the right kind of bird. It's kind of like the mouth of a person. You want to get it correct. So beaks are the same way as a mouth is for a person. Not as important as the eyes to look like the person. It's still a very important part. I always enjoy doing eyes. It's really one of my favorite things to paint on a bird. I want to leave a little bit of white around it. Not all birds have a little white around it, but I just want to do that for this bird. Okay. Probably would be better with a little bit smaller brush, but this has a pretty good tip. Now for the wings. This back wing is much darker because it is in shadow. It's not going to be the same color as this wing. It's kind of jetting out from behind the bird. So I'm going to do this, just a little swatch of Payne's Gray there. And then I'm going to get a little bit of that same manganese blue and pop it in. Okay, so for this wing, I'm going to start out by first adding just a really wet, light blue to start out with. Also going to take a little bit of that Payne's Gray mixture and just add it to the very tips of this wing. Alright, while that's drying, my bird is now dry, and I'm going to just add a darker version of my mixture of Payne's Gray and raw umber. But I think I'm going to first wet it, because I want to have a little control. I typically like to do a wet and wet technique in a little bit larger area, and then a wet on dry technique on smaller areas like the leg. First I'm going to add some of the Payne's Gray. It's just straight Payne's Gray. Around this area of its head. And then I'm going to get my raw umber and just pop it in here and there. Maybe there and around its eye. Will look good. I'm going to wet this area, and I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to do first raw umber, because I see a warmer color on the bird in this area. And then just pop in a little Payne's Gray here and there. Maybe a little too dark. So let's just move that around a little. I'm just going to leave this back as is. I'm not going to add any more to it. I just want to add to the areas that are darker. And as a matter of fact, I needed to leave this a little lighter, so I'm going to pull some of it out by wetting my brush and then wiping a lot of the moisture out. Now this is still wet, so it's still going to kind of close in, but I'm just going to leave it just like that. Now this isn't super dark underneath here, so I'm just going to add just a hair more of the Payne's gray underneath. Just a little bit. Give it some life where it looks kind of flat. Now we'll come back in and add a little bit more dark underneath this wing to show some shadow underneath. Okay, he's looking cute. Now I just want to add some darker colors in his tail. I'm just going to use some the manganese blue again and not completely cover it. I want it to look like separate feathers coming down, so maybe I'll leave, kind of do it like a negative painting around one feather with that color. Maybe something like that. Maybe do a little bit darker, excuse me. Maybe a little bit darker line right here. I'm going to give a little bit more darkness on the beak underneath. Sometimes when you're looking at something and you feel like it's not quite there yet, just keep adding, not too much. You want it to stay fresh, but you want maybe just a little bit of dark here or a little bit of dark there. It really helps at times. But I'm not going to add the dark here yet because I need that to dry a little more. So I'm going to add a little Payne's gray, a little dark Payne's gray to his legs. Now I want to add a little more darkness to this front wing. So I'm just adding some more of the manganese blue. I might do maybe pop in some teal color. I'll go ahead and add this Payne's gray underneath to show the shadow under the wing. And just going to blend it out. Cute. Besides doing a little bit of definition with a gel pen, I'm going to leave the bird now. I'm just going to let him be. I just don't want to overwork this tiny, quick painting. The next thing I'm going to do is just add a little bit of background color. I'm wetting it to here, but I'll only add the color to here so it'll just continue to blend out. I'm going to add some sap green and green gold together. So that's all I'm going to do above the bird. And I'm wetting my brush and taking off some of the moisture and just going to blend it out so that it just gradually fades out. Okay, let's just let this all dry. I use this Uniball Signo. It's waterproof and very, very fine. This is called a micro fine. I'll link it for you. These are awesome with watercolor if you want to add some really fine pen work. They are much more durable than Sakura Micron. I use those too. Sometimes on this watercolor paper, pens can tend to have a short life, but these Uniball Signos can do a lot of drawing on watercolor or under watercolor, and they don't bleed, and they're a lot less expensive, and you can get them at an office supply store. I also use the Uniball Signo brand for the white pigment ink. I'm going to take my Uniball Signo pen and I'm just going to darken and define some of the edges. Not everywhere. I don't really want to have a pen and wash look. I just want to define some edges. Alright, that's all I'm going to do with that. I'm just going to make this highlight a little larger on his eye with the white. Maybe just touch it here and there just to give a little sparkle and definition to some wings. So now I'm going to show you how I created the envelope for him. Now for the envelope, you can use really any kind of paper you want. I sometimes will use a thin mixed media paper that's substantial enough for an envelope, but it's opaque, so if you need to mail your card, it works great. But I really like this inkjet translucent vellum. It's you can see through it, so it makes a really nice card envelope when you're just wanting to give it as a gift to someone, especially if you don't know them and you're not writing anything on the envelope. It looks really cool to be able to see the bird underneath. So the first thing I need to do is trim this. Now I use this envelope punch board, it's called. It's made by We Are, and I got it on Amazon. It wasn't expensive at all. It works so great in creating your own envelopes and can really save you a lot of money. Because you can make as many envelopes as you want and not have to buy expensive paper, you know, to create the envelopes. So the first thing I need to do is to figure out what size that I need. My cards are 4x6. So you look for the card size, and then it tells you what paper size you need. The paper size that I need for a 4x6 is 8 1/4 by 8 1/4. So this is 8 1/2 by 11. So the first thing I need to do is to trim this to the correct size. And now this is kind of fun once you figure it out. It's not super complicated. The directions, the score line is 3 3/8. Now the first mark you're going to do is the score line, and you're going to punch it. And then the second one is the score guide, which is right here. So when I turn it, I'm going to go by this line and not by this line. I'll show you what I mean. So the first punch I'm going to do is 3 3/8, which is right there. You're going to punch it, and you're going to take your little scoring thing that they give you. And now with the vellum, you're going to be very gentle. With regular paper, you can press down really well, but with the vellum, you will just scratch right through it and cut it instead of just scoring it. So I'm going to be real gentle and just follow that score line that they've given me. Now the next one I'm going to do, instead of lining it up over here, I'm going to match the score that I just did up with this score line. So matching that up, punching it, and again, gently scoring it. The second time, I'm putting it on the score line, but it's also at 3 3/8. And I'm doing this on all 4 sides. You have to score it enough where it will fold for you, but then not tear through. Okay, and then on the back side of this is where you can just add a little bit of finesse by rounding off the edges or the corners. Okay, so now you have your score lines, and all you have to do is fold it. So I'm going to fold the bottom, and I'm going to fold the 2 sides. All I'm going to do is use this. It's permanent adhesive and sticky on both sides, and it's by Tombow. And I'll put that also in the links for you to find it. It lasts a really long time. It's got a lot of tape in it. You can do a lot of envelopes. And I usually do the flap side first. Sometimes you have to tease it along to get it going. And I'm just going to fold it over. I'll use my bone folder to just flatten out that top as well. Maybe flatten all the sides. So once this is completely dry, and it's pretty dry, you know, you'll write your message in here, of course, but then there you go. You've got your card that you can give away. And I use a little bit of fun washi tape. Just on the corner there, just to hold it. So hope you enjoyed this. God bless you so much, and make sure you subscribe and hit like if you liked the video, and enjoy painting.